their morning hour session for morning speeches. And as we let you know, the Senate is going to vote today around 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Check out our coverage on C-SPAN 2 on that continuing resolution to keep the government funded for 2 more weeks. Thanks for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow.
Whip limited to 5 minutes each, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Woolsey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In a speech this past weekend to religious broadcasters, the Speaker of the House called the federal debt a moral threat to our nation. It's an interesting choice of words from the leader of the House majority that has been a cheerleader for the nation's most morally objectionable policy of all, the disastrous, despicable war in Afghanistan. For some reason, their moral sensibilities are not offended by a military conflict that has cost us hundreds of billions of dollars and 1,500 of our bravest people, without advancing national security objectives or truly diminishing the terrorist threat at the same time. So how are my colleagues on the other side of the aisle resolving their moral dilemma? By asking corporate special interests to give up handouts and tax breaks? By asking the wealthiest Americans to give back more to the nation that has given them so much opportunity? Nope. By their moral calculations, the answer is to demand sacrifice from the very Americans who are bearing the brunt of this recession, from people and communities who depend upon public investment. Their moral compass tells them to cut vital programs to the bone or eliminate them altogether: food safety, family planning, health research, public housing, transportation infrastructure, college aid, and on and on. There was an article in my home newspaper over the weekend about how local health clinics could be devastated by these cuts. California alone stands to lose nearly $13 million in Homeland Security grants needed to train and equip first responders. The Republican budget cuts also, according to one study, would destroy 700,000 jobs. But that's not keeping the Speaker up at night. He sees Americans out of work, and instead of saying this is a moral threat, he says, so be it. In what moral universe, I ask you, Mr. Speaker, does it make sense to destroy jobs at home but send more Americans to die in a senseless war abroad? Programs like COPS and Head Start, with which the majority want to slash, saves lives. The war in Afghanistan, which isn't even on the table in this budget debate, has ended nearly 1,500 American lives. And our surviving servicemen and women, all coming home with devastating physical and psychological wounds. Yet, the majority party, so enthusiastic in its support for Afghanistan spending, wants to eliminate a homeless veterans initiative. That's their version of morality. Send young Americans halfway around the world to be chewed up and traumatized, then pull the plug on the support they need when they get home. That's what they call supporting the troops. The majority could kill the proverbial 2 birds with 1 stone if they wanted. They could just about solve their debt crisis by bringing our troops home and ending the moral stain on our nation that is the Afghanistan war. Somehow I'm not holding my breath until the Speaker and my Republican colleagues are prepared to show moral courage on Afghanistan. I refuse to take their moral outrage about the deficit seriously. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Westmoreland, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In October of 1890, 4 women, linked by their common lineage to heroes in the American Revolution, joined 18 others to organize the Daughters of the American Revolution. These founders began a campaign to serve the country through preservation of American history And since its founding, the Daughters of the American Revolution have expanded to nearly 3,000 chapters and over 850,000 members around the world. In the middle of the era ripe with inequality for women, this organization flourished on a strong foundation of pride for the men and women who fought to gain American independence. Theirs is a rich history filled with patriotism, self-sacrifice, and dedication to education. For decades, the Daughters of the American Revolution have sponsored scholarships and supported schools for the underprivileged. Their support has aided construction and preservation of dozens of now historic locations around the country. Their scholarships have provided thousands with the opportunity to attend institutes of higher education. Their outreach programs recognize and encourage service to the country and to their communities. And on March 15th, the John Houston chapter of the National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution will observe its 100th anniversary in the city of Thomaston, Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I come to the House floor today to celebrate with the Houston chapter 100 years of service to the great state of Georgia. For a group devoted to the promotion of American history, it is with great pleasure that I am able to honor the years of education, historic preservation, patriotism, and service that the Daughters of the American Revolution have selfishly given to this great country. They trace their heritage back to the very men and women who fought for American independence from the British tyranny. Each member must prove blood relation to the revolutionary patriot, and throughout the years, a vast collection of family histories has been compiled and preserved for our children and our grandchildren to appreciate. With the motto, God, Home, and Country, this nonprofit, non-politically aligned organization has positively impacted hundreds of thousands of lives. And I'm very proud to represent several National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution chapters in the 3rd Congressional District of Georgia. And I know Thomaston, Georgia is especially grateful for the Houston chapter's presence in their community, and so am I. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about a serious problem in Puerto Rico. The problem is the systematic effort by the ruling party to deny the right of the people to speak freely, to criticize their government openly, and to make their voices heard. I talked about student protests that have been met with violent resistance by the Puerto Rican police. I talked about closed meetings of the legislature and about the efforts to silence and destroy the local bar association. I was not the first to speak about it, and I could have said much more. This report, entitled Human Rights Crisis in Puerto Rico, First Amendment Under Siege, is searing. It details the complaints of students, legislature, the press, and the general public who were beaten and pepper sprayed by police. Female students who were treated with gross disrespect. The government's overreaction to demonstrations at the university and at the Capitol over budget cuts and layoffs. This next picture, this is the Capitol in San Juan, Puerto Rico, surrounded by riot police as people attempted to gain entrance to a same assembly as this one here today. And this is how they were met by the police. This is how the police dealt with protesters. The images of police tactics and behavior in these photos explain why our Department of Justice is investigating the Puerto Rican police for excessive force and unconstitutional searches as we speak today. How could you see these images and not speak out? And I was hardly the first to speak out about these matters, and I probably won't be the last. Here it is, the Daily Sun in Puerto Rico, sticks versus speech. As a member of Congress, it is more than my right. It is my obligation to speak out when fundamental freedoms are attacked. And what was the response to my free speech defending the right of the Puerto Rican people to be heard? It was to challenge my right to be heard here in the halls of Congress. The resident commissioner of Puerto Rico said in this very body, he is the only one authorized to speak about Puerto Rico at any time. This week, the Puerto Rican legislator debated a resolution of censure, yes, censure, condemning me for speaking out against the very abuses. A leading member of the ruling party even said, Gutierrez wasn't born in Puerto Rico. His kids weren't born in Puerto Rico. Gutierrez doesn't plan to die and be buried in Puerto Rico, so Gutierrez doesn't have the right to speak about Puerto Rico. Well, let me tell you something. If you see injustice anywhere, it is not only your right but your duty to speak about it. We don't speak about injustice or apartheid or human rights abuses or the denial of rights of women in places around the world because we ourselves were born there. That'd be silly. Where we see injustice, we speak out because it is the right thing to do. Ironically, by questioning my right to speak out on behalf of free speech, they have made my point crystal clear. By challenging my free speech, they have amplified the words of my 5-minute speech more than if I had spoken for 5 hours. And it is their right. My critics have the right of free speech, even as they deny the same right to others. But I want them to understand this. Your efforts to silence me, just like your efforts to silence so many people in Puerto Rico who disagree with your government, will fail. Just as every effort to blockade progress only makes the march towards justice more powerful and swift. I may not be Puerto Rican enough for some people, but I know this. Nowhere on earth will you find a people harder to silence than Puerto Ricans. You won't locate my love for Puerto Rico on my birth certificate, or on my driver's license, or on my children's birth certificate, or any other piece of paper. My love for Puerto Rico is right here in my heart, a heart that beats with our history and our language and our heroes, a place where when I moved to as a teenager, people talked and argued and debated because we cared deeply about our island and its future. And that's still true today. And that freedom is still beating in the hearts of university students, working men and women, labor leaders, lawyers and environmentalists, and every person who believes in free speech. You will not silence them, and you will not silence me. Abraham Lincoln, a leader who valued freedom above all else, said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves." It's good advice, and I hope the leaders of Puerto Rico take it. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the ACLU report titled Human Rights Crisis in Puerto Rico, First Amendment Under Siege, be entered into the record. I further request unanimous consent that a statement by the President of the Service Employees International Union be entered into the record, and that the essay exposing the shadows of civil rights in Puerto Rico by the National Puerto Rican Coalition be also entered into the record without objection.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Washington, Mrs. McMorris-Rogers, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to recognize Karma Hadjimikalakis. Up until recently, Karma was the principal lecturer in business economics and finance at the University of Washington Foster School of Business. She was the faculty director of the Pacific Rim Bankers Program, and she was the Evert McCabe Faculty Fellow. She was also my professor while I was earning my executive MBA. Last Monday, February 21st, Karma passed away after a long illness. And as her student, I wanted to acknowledge her incredible accomplishments, both professional and personal, over the course of an extraordinary life. Born on January 21st, 1944, in Utica, New York, Karma was educated at nearby Elmira College and earned master's and doctorate degrees at the University of Rochester. She joined the faculty at the University of Washington in 1970, initially the Department of Economics and then at the Foster School of Business. The turning point in her career was a 2-year stint as visiting economist at the Federal Reserve Board from 1980 to 1982. In her work with the banking sector of the Fed's Division of Research and Statistics, Karma developed the ability to provide penetrating analysis that paints an accurate assessment of the current economic situation. In other words, she learned to find meaning in the disparate data. Karma's time at the Fed also led her to realize that teaching was her true calling. She returned to the University of Washington with a new insider's expertise in the inner workings of the Federal Reserve System and monetary policy. And she spent the next 3 years applying her economic knowledge with wonderful results. Karma won more than 45 major teaching awards at the Foster School, including the first PACCAR Award for Excellence in Teaching, the school's highest faculty honor. Her twice-annual economic forecast lectures became a standing room-only tradition, and her 1995 textbook, Contemporary Money, Banking, and Financial Markets, Theory and Practice, co-authored with her husband, Michael Hadjimikalakis, became an influential classic. Former students universally spoke of themselves as privileged and blessed to have had the opportunity to study under Karma. They told of her ability to decipher data with real-life examples, to make macroeconomics fascinating, even fun. They spoke of her profound impact on their lives. As one of Karma's students, class of 2002, I wanted to add my own testimony to her impact. When I was a student learning under her experienced and dedicated expertise, it was one of the best parts of the University of Washington's EMBA program. In all of her classes, Karma went above and beyond the call of duty, not just to present the course material, but to make herself available to us outside of the classroom, to answer our questions and ensure our understanding and application of the coursework. She challenged my study of economics and how to craft successful public policies in a free market economy. Quite simply, they don't come any better. I asked my colleagues to join me today in recognizing Karma Hadjimikalakis for her 4 decades of excellent teaching, communicating knowledge with absolute generosity, boundless energy, and endearing warmth. Karma's impact on thousands of students will endure for decades and in ways we will never completely know, and she will always have a special place in my heart.
Gentlewoman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Miller, for 5 minutes.
Actually, now it's consent to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight a very serious and dangerous attack on middle-class Americans being waged by the Republicans in the Congress and in state houses across the country. The Wisconsin governor's assault on public employees is getting most of the media attention, but it is just one of the fronts of the extreme right-wing and anti-worker agenda trying to be carried out in this country. In fact, there is a well-financed and coordinated national attack against working families and the unions that they may belong to, the goal of which is to take away power from the middle class and give it to the wealthy special interests that have backed Republicans in their elections. And here's how it's playing out. The Republicans are taking a real problem, a serious problem, that of the budget deficits and long-term debt in this country, and they are assigning it to a fake cause. Under the guise of cutting deficits, they say that working people's union rights and workplace protections must be eliminated. In fact, this attack against working people is designed to remove the vital check on special interest corporate power from overrunning our democracy. This is an extreme agenda that they have always pursued, but they are now using their newfound political power to relaunch the attacks, to attack the guarantee to a decent wage, to attack the rights to ensure a safe workplace, so when the workers leave home in the morning, they know they will return safely at night. They attack the rights to have access to affordable health care and a secure retirement. And yes, they're even attacking the rights of working people to join together and to bargain for a better life and better conditions in the workplace. So at the same time that the governors of Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, and New Jersey are demanding more in public-private union employee sacrifices, the Republicans in Washington are using the budget fight to roll back the rights and the protections of American workers. Their spending priorities and their so-called continuing resolution of last week show their hand. They voted to take away the workers' ability to repeal unjust and unfair and illegal actions in the workplace by getting rid of the National Labor Relations Board. They voted to undermine the wages of construction workers on federal projects. They voted to roll back workplace health and safety protections guaranteed by federal law. All of this while protecting the corporate interests they have sought to cut education funding and critical support for workers in the need for job training and, yes, even kids in Head Start. These rights and services helped to build and sustain our nation's middle class in the last century, making the United States the greatest economic power in the history of the world. We have the greatest workers in the world because of these rights. But now the rights and economic strength of America's middle class is at risk. It's under a systematic assault in the state houses controlled by Republican legislatures and Republican governors, and in this House of Representatives controlled by the Republicans. A systematic assault that goes beyond, after the unions, after the workers have agreed to give backs, to furlough days, to give back health care benefits, pension benefits, they want more. They want their union, they want their rights in the workplace to be terminated. It's un-American. There's a reason. There's a reason that we have collective bargaining in this country, because we know that workers should have a right to bond together, to improve the workplace, to improve their working conditions. And when they do, those rights flow to the rest of middle-class working families in this country, and even the non-union workplaces. Those rights are there. That's how we achieved an 8-hour day. That's how we achieved vacation time. That's how we achieved health care. That's how we achieved overtime, whether you're in the union or not. But now they want to take away the right of unions to organize in the workplace, the rights of workers to organize. But the Republicans have asked for no sacrifices in all these cuts. They have asked for no sacrifice of the well-off and the well-connected. In fact, these cuts are being made in the name of the well-off and the well-connected, so that they will be able to push for lower wages, for lower benefits, for lower health care for our workers, for lower take-home pay. And what does that do to the economy? It makes America poorer. How do you build a strong middle-class community on the back of low-wage earners? You can't do it. It's never been done. But the fact is, many years ago, America decided we wanted a strong and a vibrant middle class. And we did that by forming the unions and by giving people a right to have say at work. We know, study after study, where workers have a say in the workplace. They work harder, they're more productive, they're more innovative, they're more open to new ideas. But what do we say to workers with the governors of Wisconsin and Ohio and Indiana? Do what we tell you to do it for less pay, do it for less benefits, and do it because we told you so. That doesn't sound like America to me. It doesn't sound like a powerful country that has the best and most productive workers in the history of the world. That sounds like something that we're not familiar with in this country. That sounds like an autocratic system that just demands and takes, but never gives.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, houses were shut tight and cloth wedged around doors and windows, but the dust came in so thinly that it could not be seen in the air, and it settled like pollen on the chairs and tables and on the dishes. Ma and Pa Joe did everything they could to save their farm from slipping away into the dust bowl, but ultimately they lost to a force far greater than any effort they could muster. Mr. Speaker, though this is just one line ripped from the pages of the Grapes of Wrath, farmers and ranchers today are facing a modern-day dust storm, the wrath of the EPA. Just when you think you've heard it all, bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. come up with some harebrained idea that leaves you scratching your head in wonderment. The Environmental Protection Agency has apparently run out of things to regulate and tax, so they are considering new guidelines for regulating particulate matter emissions, more commonly known to you and me as dust. Now, I know what you are thinking. This just cannot be true. What kind of crazy scheme is this? Well, the EPA Dust Police would specifically regulate farm dust. Farmers would be required to have dust collectors on their harvesters, planters, combines, and haying equipment. But my personal favorite is to crack down on dust created from driving a pickup truck down a dirt or gravel road. I'm not making this up. The federal government is considering farm dust regulations that are caused from driving on a dirt road. So I thought, well, maybe this is just some backdoor attempt to rid America of our majestic four-wheel drive pickups that liberals loathe so much and find some way to force these battery-operated toy cars on the rest of us. But the new proposals don't just apply to dust created from driving. No, they are fair and they are balanced in their overreaching authority. Farmers and ranchers are going to have to somehow limit the dust created by livestock on their property as well. So, say Bessie the cow kicks up too much dust running over to your pickup truck at feeding time. The EPA is going to fine you for Bessie's misconduct. You need to move your cattle to another pasture during the daytime? Well, don't do it on a dry day because they may kick up too much dust. The Dust Police solution is to manage dusty dirt roads with water, or get this, pave them with asphalt. Now, this is another can of worms. Every farmer and rancher will have the water police raining down on them by the time the first drop hits the dirt. I would think the EPA would be aware of the fact that we already have a shortage of water on ranches and farmers in our country. But make no matter to them, they still want you to control it. And what about this paving the asphalt over these roads? Really, they can't be serious. Aside from the sheer magnitude of this undertaking, the idea is completely unfeasible and it costs prohibitive. The absurdity of these types of federal regulations is what makes normal Americans all across our country frustrated with Washington, D.C. I will say there is a little good news on the horizon. We're not all out of touch here in Congress. My colleague, Representative Kristi Noem from South Dakota, filed an amendment to the continuing resolution last week to eliminate funding to the EPA to enforce the dust regulations. I'm proud to say that this passed the House of Representatives, and it's now down the hallway with the Senate. Let's see what they do. This type of federal meddling is exactly what causes businesses to go out of business, lay off workers, and in many cases fail. These types of expensive regulations will finally shut the barn door on the American rancher and farmer for good. I understand that dust may seem like a serious threat to someone who has never been outside the EPA's marble Potomac palaces or elite castles of the academia. But let's use some common sense here. Farmers and ranchers are the best environmentalists in our country. No one respects the land or animals more than those who actually live on it and depend on it for a living. Instead of burying us in ridiculous regulations that do nothing to improve the quality of life, the environment, the government should look for incentives to encourage farmers and ranchers to produce more, not less. We don't need the EPA-inflicted dust bowl to devastate the American heartland. The EPA should just head on down the road and leave this regulation in the dust. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks. Today, March 2nd, 2011, marks Texas Independence Day. 175 years ago, the Texas Declaration of Independence was ratified by the Convention of 1836 on Washington on the Brazos in Texas. This is an important day for Texas, and patriotic Texans observe this occasion with great pride. In 1824, a military dictatorship took over Mexico, abolishing the Mexican Constitution. The new military dictatorship refused to provide trial by jury, freedom of religion, public education for their citizens, and allowed for the confiscation of firearms. This last one particularly intolerable, particularly for Texans. The Texas Declaration of Independence states that the Texas government had been forcibly changed without their consent from a restricted federal republic composed of sovereign states to a consolidated military despotism. It stated that because of the injustice of Santa Anna's tyrannical government, Texans were severing their connection with the Mexican nation and declaring themselves a free and sovereign independent republic, fully invested with all the rights and attributes that belong to independent nations, and a declaration that they fearlessly and confidently committed their decision to the supreme arbiter of the destinies of nations. The Texas Declaration of Independence was needed because this military dictatorship had ceased to protect their lives, liberty, and property of the people of Texas. Failure to provide these basic rights violated the sacred contract between the government and the people. And Texans did not still today, Texans did that time and want to still today stand up for their rights. In response, the Mexican Army marched to Texas, waging a war on the land and the people, enforcing the decrees of the military dictatorship with brute force and without any democratic legitimacy. Today, 175 years later, Texas President and previous governor of Texas, Sam Houston, and other delegates signed the Texas Declaration of Independence. General Santa Anna's army besieged the independent forces at the Alamo in San Antonio. 4 days after the signing of this independence, the declaration, the Alamo fell with their commander, Lieutenant Colonel William Barrett Travis, and former Tennessee Congressman Davy Crockett, and approximately 200 other Texas defenders. All these men were killed in action in a heroic sacrifice for Texas freedom. If this tragedy were not enough, weeks later, Santa Anna's army massacred 300 unarmed Texans at Goliad on March the 27th. of 1836. In a dramatic turnaround, Texans achieved their independence several weeks later on April the 21st, 1836. Roughly 900 members of the Texan Army overpowered a much larger Mexican army in a surprise attack at the Battle of San Jacinto in Harris County, Texas. This battle is memorialized along the San Jacinto River and the San Jacinto Monument in our congressional district. The monument's larger than the monument here in Washington, the Washington Monument. Sam Houston High School, which we have a lot of schools in our district named for Sam Houston, actually received a Texas historical marker about 3 weeks ago. Today we give thanks to many Texans that sacrificed for the freedom we enjoy today. God bless Texas and God bless America. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
So as you heard, the House will return for legislative work at noon Eastern today. Members have 2 bills